And we're off.
And they're off. So for those of you that haven't seen these before, the goal of this is going to be for both runners to complete 5 rows, columns, diagonals on the bingo card. Overlap is allowed. And they're going to be looking to do that as fast as possible. They don't have to do any other, like, there's no other progress required. They don't have to beat red. They don't have to beat the Elite Four. None of that. They're just going straight for the 5 bingos. And they are using the same ROM, they're looking at the same card. So they're all on the same table here.
The ROM makes a couple changes to make things a little nicer to work with. Probably the most obvious change you can see right now is the text is extremely fast.
So we have instant text, we have hold to mash, so you know, just mashing the button as fast as you possibly can. There's a couple changes to progress. A lot of the rocket sections are cut out to just kind of open up the game a lot sooner. Yeah. Ew,
what do we got for starters?
Blissey.
Oh, that's...
So they have a choice between a good main, which looks like they're probably both going to take the better potential main. Yep. They also had the option there of taking Slugma and giving their rival a Blissey, which would have been... I could have seen it. I probably would have done that myself, just to be a little bit different.
Yeah, I would have considered the Slugma also. Blissey is a lot of experience.
I'm kind of hardwired myself to want to switch off of whatever I start with anyway, even if it's something that could potentially be good.
The Ursaring had extreme speed.
About nothing else, though. I saw Minimize and Bite. I didn't see the 4th move. I think it was like Spiderweb, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's... Might get him through a couple early things, but it's not going to have a lot of longevity unless it learns something.
Yeah. Still, if it just learns one other move, it's basically dead.
Mm-hmm. You can have the best Pokemon in the world in one of these and just have no moves, and maining that Pokemon is not going to be a good decision. I always tell people that moves is... like, good moves are way more important than a good Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
I've run some really garbage Pokemon with really good moves, and it's done me a lot better than Mewtwo's with Horn Attack and what have you.
So our buddy Mamgar can attest to, just in the last one we did.
Yeah. Get an Espeon with Stab, or...
Yeah, the Espeon I had Psychic, and the Mewtwo's best move was, I think, Surf. So... oh, they both run into Moltres here.
Definitely a bit of Herc bait.
That's dangerous, Moltres.
Herc's usually a fan of the legendary birds. Also helps when they're on the card.
So that's a good pickup.
Mm-hmm. And if you decide to main it, it's going to bait out all those rock-type moves that are also on the card.
Listen here, you.
Thinking emoji. Hey, it has Stab. That Moltres is actually decently promising.
I didn't see what the... oh, it has...
Hyper Beam, Metal Claw, Dynamic Punch, and Wing Attack.
Yeah,
it has serviceable attack as well. It's not like it's just pure special.
I'm just
not
always
great
wary
neither.
about double-type weaknesses.
There's a Girafarig already. That's going to be our bottom left tile.
Yeah. Oh, it has a sleep-inducing move, too.
It sure does.
He's all
well, it sort of gives Monty information on... or that gives Herc information, rather, on what has it.
Yeah, the runners aren't watching each other's streams, so they don't know what they're doing. The only information that they give each other is when they mark a goal on the card. When you achieve a goal, you have to mark it. You can't just hide the fact that you have it. So, by capturing, or by marking the Girafarig square and sleep-inducing move at the same time, it stands to reason that one of those 3 Pokemon has a sleep move. And on top of that, because of how early it is, pretty likelihood that it's in one of the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, there's been a lot of good power plays in Crystal Cinco Bingo history of people just mind gaming and figuring out when someone got something without actually having information on it.
And these guys like play with each other enough that they kind of know some of their tendencies. Like where their favorite spots to check when they're out of information. For example, I know that Paradox keys have their favorite spots.
Monty and Herc are actually a good showcase for general different playstyles as well. Monty tends to blitz as much as possible and just gun through the game progress and just hope that getting to the cleanup phase kind of gets him as much as he needs. Whereas Herc usually is a little bit more... He's been a little bit less thorough, I think, recently, but Herc is usually pretty thorough in checking things.
He'll check a slot or two before moving on.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that makes all the difference. But as we were saying before, too, marking something early does also give a lot away to your opponent as well, so you want to be careful about that as well.
Yeah, Herc tends to, he likes to find things and then not catch them. Ooh,
Which can very easily also shoot you in the foot, as I've had many a time. I've tried to go delay something and try to come back to something on like Route 29 or Route 30, and it's like a 10% slot that I just never find again. That's also something else that's important to mention, is the way we mentioned that we have a kind of a special ROM that makes some things a little bit different about the game. One of those things that we have is better encounter slots, which makes it so that every ground encounter generation, so grass, caves, that kind of thing, and all water has 7 and 3 slots respectively, and those slots have a consistent weighting. So it's 220. I think it's 220s, 315, or 215s and 310s, I believe. I always get it mixed up on which the distribution of the three. And then all water is 60, 30, 10. So if you ever hear us referring to like a 10% slot or something, it's the rare slots on that route.
Also, I think Montebank changed to the Girafarig for a main. At least that's what he fought.
It looks like it. It's a bit of a safer Pokemon than Moltres, that's for sure.
Girafarig's got nice typing, and it's actually got pretty good stats, and it highlights the fact that, like, you don't need to have a Mewtwo or a Ho-Oh or whatever. Like, there's plenty of serviceable Pokemon in a bingo environment. Like, Girafarig wouldn't be one that I would take all the way to Red, for example, but usually the game ends before you get to Kanto, so...
Yeah, usually these end pretty soon, like around or after you get to Chuck. So you're ending off around the level 30 to 35 range in most of these, and even 35 is kind of the high end. So a lot of these Pokemon that have like lower base stat totals don't really have time to fall off. I usually, as a general rule of thumb, things around like usually in the offensive categories like attack and special attack, I kind of as a low benchmark, I kind of shoot for 80 to 90. As like the low end of what I'll accept, obviously based on the moves they have, but you definitely don't need something in the Ho-Oh 130 base attack region. That'll certainly do you very well, but it's definitely not necessary for a lot of the game.
Herc found himself a Hitmonchan on Route 46.
It's actually kind of surprising that he's not just going with the Moltres. It's not what I would have expected him to do, even though the Moltres isn't fantastic, but this is Herc we're talking about.
I'm not sure what Montebank's doing now. Now he's got the Moltres out again. I didn't see the whole rival fight, so maybe it died. But speaking of a lot of experience, there's
the Blissey showed up anyway.
Is
he gonna die to a Blissey?
I mean, he got hit by Dynamic Punch, so confusion ruins everything. So looking ahead at some of the goals on the card, probably the one that sticks out like a sore thumb is Rising Badge.
Yep. Which Monty always loves to try to do, even though it's a rather time-consuming goal and oftentimes not worth it.
You'd need a really good main to make it worth time-wise.
Or you need to just really need the goal. You just need to not have a lot of info.
We'll
They've got a pretty free top left, bottom right.
Sprout Tower because of the 4 non-damaging moves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually both of their diagonals are looking pretty dang doable, which is really nice to see. That definitely makes routing a little bit easier when you can Because it's pretty easy to overlap things with the diagonals. There's potential overlap with 6 badges and Rising Badge as well, too, if they decide to do that.
Yeah. It looks like they have a path for 2 bingos already, at least just from what information we have. You got TLVR and row 4.
Mm-hmm.
Row 4 assuming that they can find something that meets the non-damaging moves, which is usually pretty free.
And 4 moves sharing its type usually boils down to either a normal type or a normal flying type, and just teaching it a bunch of HMs.
Hey, look, it's your favorite main.
It is. Didn't even give it a chance. Come on, Herc. Disappointed in you.
A 4-star in Dark Cave, that was worth the detour. And if anybody's curious, buy all 3 Game Corner Pokemon equates to about 48,000. Or it is 48,000.
Yeah, so this is the first time we've done a showcase race with this newer bingo card. We've been using a bit of kind of an outdated one now for the tournament. Well, we were just to keep it consistent through the first tournament, but we'll be using this set of goals for the next tournament that's starting soon. There's quite a few changes to it compared to what a lot of you may have seen during the tournament. And a lot of the goals are kind of fixed or slightly tweaked versions of goals we had before. So buy all 3 Game Corner Pokes used to be the $50,000 goal, which required you to just have 50,000. But due to some complications we had with, like, you know, if $0 shows up on the same card or kind of balancing that, we realized that all 3 Game Corner Pokemon cost 48,000 in total and have a lot better synergy potential with a lot of other goals. So we decided to switch it over to buying all 3 Game Corner Pokemon, and it's worked out really, really well.
Also, Herc found a Raikou with a Rock Throw on it, so the Herc strategy is paying off a little early, getting some of these goals. That it's kind of late enough in the early game where the potential places where these Pokemon are gets a little bit wider.
Yeah, so once you get to Violet and you see somebody mark something off around Violet, I mean, it could still be in 31, it could be in Dark Cave, it could be in Sprout Tower, it could be on Route 36, it could be in Ruins of Alph. Like, there's tons of options for things that, like, places it could be, and this is one of the key areas where kind of knowing your opponent's tendencies really comes into play. Like me, for instance, I like to just go to Ruins of Alph right away if I still need a main at this point. So, like, a lot of people have read me on going to Ruins of Alph and finding something there, and it's paid off for them.
Ruins of Alph.
Blessings upon this run.
I'm not sure why he's going here. Unless
I'm not sure either. I don't know if he's just not feeling this Moltres, or he might want to look for something before he does Sprout Tower. Monty's just going for it.
Yeah,
this is very well highlighting what I was bringing up before as far as the differences between the two of them. Monty likes to just, as soon as he gets something remotely decent, like, he just goes. Like, he will just go. Whereas Herc really wants to just kind of scout things out first, and neither of those playstyles is inherently correct or wrong in any way. They just kind of, sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't. It's just the nature of these.
I would say that the blitzing strategy tends to pay off more often, just because as you're just banking on the fact that you'll have information from required fights, but when it doesn't pay off, that's when you're in trouble.
And there's definitely the times too where if you blitz, if you're running into Pokemon, you're most often running them on trainers, so you don't have the opportunity to catch them, so you're wasting time to look at where they are, you're wasting time to go to where they are, you're wasting time to get the random chance of finding them. So, like, there is some inherent kind of balancing there as far as just lucking into something and just having it, or getting info on it and then having to go back for it.
If a rock-type move doesn't show up for Monty later on, that could end up being a bigger advantage. It's harder to find the move-based goals compared to a Pokemon because you don't know exactly what you're looking for.
Well, and the further you get into the game as well, the more likelihood that you're just going to be one-shotting everything or two-shotting everything and not really giving anything a chance to like show you its moveset. So you're giving yourself a little bit less room for information there as well. And I mean, he is running a Moltres so far, so like his odds of seeing a rock type move are pretty high, but that requires him not killing something, and you know, whatever hits him with a rock type move is probably just going to destroy Moltres, so there's going to be some problems there, but we'll see what happens. So we briefly mentioned the reason they're doing Sprout Tower right now is probably for Pokemon with 4 non-TM, non-damaging moves. Because of the way the randomizer works, Pokemon can only be generated with a maximum of 3 non-damaging moves. They will always get 1 damaging move, and that's just to prevent you from, you know, getting screwed on a starter. You know, all the Pokemon have potential to be usable. So the key way to usually complete this goal is finding a Pokemon with 3 of those non-damaging moves and then teaching it Flash, because that is not a TM. And that's kind of the idea of the goal is to just find something randomly plus giving you a reason to do Sprout Tower.
Zap Cannon on the Sandshrew, giving Monty some trouble. Oh no!
Lantern's not a great thing to see with this Moltres either.
I don't know if he's gonna beat Elderly. Wow, he actually lucked out.
Yeah, that free switch out was nice. Almost healed Caterpie.
The Elderly here at the top of Sprout Tower can be really difficult to deal with because of 2 level 7s and 2 level 10s. I've had far too many 8 bingos where I go to get Flash and then Elderly's just impossible, so I have to go back for it.
Yeah, sort of the trade-off with doing Sprout Tower early is the first trainer in Falconer's Gym is a level 9, which can usually cause huge issues because you're usually not that high of a level when you get there. So like doing Sprout Tower is often a good play to get yourself some extra experience and make Falconer's Gym a little bit easier. But on the other hand, you could just run into Elderly and get walled anyway, so it can just screw you both ways, unfortunately.
Monty got pretty lucky during that fight, and Herc's looking like he's going to have a similar fight here, getting hit by Zap Cannon.
Mm-hmm.
That Lantern had Hydro Pump too, so it's no slouch.
Yeah, this is sort of the interesting thing about them both having the same main at the moment. It's just that they're gonna have the same problems more than likely, and it's just gonna be a matter of how they get over those humps as they come.
That Forest Store coming in handy there.
I had Clamp too, oh my gosh.
Herc, you're killing me. Metal Claw on a water electric type.
I don't know if he's like trying to get the attack boost. He just doesn't trust that Hyper Beam's gonna do enough. You outspeed it! What are you doing?
I think he
Herc?
might be able to stall out the Hydro Pumps.
Oh, that's probably what he... Yeah, okay. That makes sense. I didn't think about that.
As Curse.
And this is even just showcasing a difference in how they handle things as well. Like, Monty just went for the Hyper Beam and it paid off, and Herc's trying to play a little bit safer because he doesn't trust this quite as much. And it's making this fight quite a bit slower as a result.
Raiku's gonna clutch it out at this rate.
Little thrashing boy over here.
No, not quite, but it did what it needed.
That's what he needed.
Meanwhile, Falconer's Gym not giving Monty any problems right now.
Yeah, Monty's making pretty good use of Hyper Beam.
Well, Confusion's a move.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be trying to look to get rid of a lot of these physical moves. As I said, Moltres' physical attack is serviceable, but it's still not great. Certainly not as good as its special attack, that's for sure. I definitely don't think... Personally, I don't think they would have really considered this Moltres if it didn't have Stab. Like,
Yeah.
Wing Attack's a really good move to have. The rest of the movesets, it's serviceable secondary, but it's not really... I wouldn't have been feeling too great about it myself.
Herc didn't get an escape rope before coming up, so he's got to take the walk of shame.
Yeah, let's see what Falconer's TM is. I didn't even see that, it went so fast.
Sand attack. And Downgraded mud slab.
Yeah, it's almost what he had originally. Almost.
It sucks to be in a position where you have a Pokemon that's just like one move away, and you're hoping that one of the early TMs will bail you out, and then you just see Sand Attack.
One nice thing we've changed as far as the rulings since the tournament, when we were doing kind of the initial races in the tournament, we didn't have the randomizer set to give us full TM compatibility. So you could get a really good TM, and then your main just wouldn't learn it, and it was just the worst feel-bad situation just possible. So we've kind of decided, we did a lot of testing with it, and we're going to be using it for the next tournament to kind of get rid of those really silly feel-bad moments. There's already enough randomness in getting a good move from a TM randomly, that, like, if you get it, you should be able to learn it. Also, I'm getting beamed right now. Alright. Getting mixer doesn't really flow off the tongue as well. Revive, that's pretty dang nice, especially when you're running something as volatile as a Moltres.
I've actually been making a habit of buying a couple revives in that critique.
Yeah, I usually buy 1 to 3 based on the situation. But if I have any on hand, I completely skip that shop.
Even if you're running something that's surefire, you just... Once in a while, you might just get screwed by bad luck in a fight, or whatever else.
Oh, Monty's really blitzing. He's skipping a lot of items in Union Cave.
This is just what he does. He doesn't like grabbing that many items.
Yeah, like even when I usually have a tendency to try to blitz pretty hard, but I usually pick up every item that's relatively on the way. One thing that's important to note with that trainer that Monty just passed as well is another setting that we have in the special ROM we have. Turns every spinner in the game into essentially just a rotator. They all rotate in a fixed direction at a fixed interval. So there's a lot of cases like that where there's just 100% consistent movement that you can do and get past them every single time. There's a lot of things we usually do with these to kind of reduce elements that would be extremely random in the base game in exchange for all these other elements that the randomizer brings in. So that, you know, like knowledge and things still kind of have a prevailing identity in here. Because it would suck to just go into a randomizer and just randomize everything and just not know what's going on, and knowledge just doesn't play a part at all.
Good old Rotatos.
And spinners in Gen 2 are notoriously awful on their normal settings.
They're on par with Gen 4.
They're something else.
We haven't really seen much for information since the beginning.
No, we've kind of had a lull here. Granted, they aren't doing a whole lot of fights on 32 due to not really needing them, so...
Mm-hmm. So, an interesting other thing to note, and this also just kind of goes with how Monty likes to metagame people, is, there was a TM in Union Cave that he didn't pick up. And if I know Herc, he's probably gonna go get it.
More than likely.
And so Monty likes to skip TMs and then go back for it if he sees it gets picked up. But I've been screwed in that in races before, where a TM that was what we were looking for, like TM20, but neither people picked them up.
Yeah.
So we just assumed it didn't exist, even though it was sitting right there in National Park.
And this is kind of just what you learn to do against Monty as well, is you counter metagame him, and you know that he does that if you play with him enough, and you just skip the TMs and then screw both of you. Kind of just have to take him down with you.
Just a lot of mind games when you get past, like, the biggest barrier initially is just the sheer amount of knowledge you need. You know, the start of the game. Like, just knowing how to complete the goals is probably the hardest part for new people.
Definitely.
Once you have a better feel for the game and know what to do, and then that's where the mind games start coming in.
There's a lot of goals as well that I feel like a lot of new players struggle with. They think that they're kind of random or unreliable to get, and there really is just a 100% reliable way to get them every single ROM, regardless of what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the biggest things that, you know, people realize, because, you know, there's a bunch of new runners that come in and they're like, oh, is this goal completable? Is this, you know, I didn't think this card was completable because of the information I had, when in reality there was a bunch of free goals in front of them. That's just all kind of part of the learning experience with this.
Kirk found an execute from fishing. An executor is on the
It
card.
sure is. It's not in the
So-
greatest spot on the card. It's not in an awful spot either, but he never saw that Giraffe. Well, I guess he does have Giraffe Rig info now, one of the trainers, so he does know for sure where Giraffe Rig is. So he's,
Mhm.
if he does go for it, he's gonna see the sleep type move too, which I can only assume he has tied the two together at this point. I mean, he doesn't know it's Giraffe Rig, I guess, but
That's a move set on that execute too.
mm-hmm.
So fishing has similar slots to surfing, I believe, but they don't
Yeah,
show up
60,
in the
30, 10.
Pokédex. The only types of encounters that show up on the Pokédex are surfing and ground encounters. It doesn't do rock smash or headbutt or fishing.
Yeah, there's a lot of slots that you can check throughout the course of the game that give you potential information that no one else would have access to in the Pokédex. And a lot of times checking those makes all the difference.
And TM and Union Cave was tackle. That was worth the detour.
I mean, it could be helpful for a Pokemon with 4 moves sharing its type. Eh?
Could
Eh?
be.
Yeah, this is a card they're still definitely going to need a lot of information for. Got a lot of goals in really important spots that they just haven't seen anything for yet. I mean, it's still early. They still have a lot of time, but...
Giraffe Rig learned Sweet Scent naturally. That's convenient.
And that is a move sharing its type. We're getting
It
there.
He's got a path to
On
that
our
one.
way.
Sweet Scent's a pretty nice move in this because it automatically triggers an encounter. And when you're in the cleanup phase, you don't want to be stuck going back and forth.
In the base game, there is a TM that is always Sweet Scent, and we used to play without... There's a setting in the randomizer that you can make it so that all field moves, so Headbutt, Dig, Sweet Scent, that kind of thing, are all where they would be normally, or you can have them be random like everything else. We used to play without that setting, so locking into Sweet Scent was a huge deal, and often was a huge polarizing factor in how races played out. So one thing we kind of did as we progressed is we decided to use that setting, and it's definitely smoothed out races and made them a little bit more skill intensive, since one person lucking into Sweet Scent doesn't just give them such an easier time checking for Pokemon. So Sweet Scent is going to be the TM right after Ilex Forest, as it is usually. And the way that, I guess this is an important time to bring this up as well, the way TMs get randomized, every item that is given to you by an NPC, including TMs, is going to be the same item that it was in the original game. With TMs, however, since they're giving you a fixed number, the TM number is going to always be the same, but the moves get shuffled around. So, or not shuffled, they get randomized. So Falkner, for instance, is always going to give you TM31, but what TM31 is going to be random every single time. So, for instance, if you found, since Dig is one of the TMs that would be random, but also a fixed move, TM28 is in a random location, but it's always going to be Dig because of that field move condition that I mentioned.
Now, speaking of TMs that are given as gifts, that's relevant for TM50 and on row 2, column 4. That's given to you by delivering the mail from the guard that's north of Goldenrod.
Yeah, an important thing to note too with how the card notates things is you see it says TM50 and then it says Nightmare. you don't need it to be Nightmare. You don't need a move. You don't need anything to do with Nightmare. Really, what that's there for is to kind of remind people, like, hey, this is what the TM was in the base game, so that people can have straight which TM they're looking for. As far as the random TMs, like TM20, that doesn't really matter as much, but it's mostly just there for consistency.
Yeah, there is a possibility for TM20 to be in basically an inaccessible location. And because all the TMs that are on the ground, they're shuffled around, and there's 2 TMs that are the same as gift TMs. They're supposed to be duplicates in the base game, so those 2 TMs are completely randomized. They can be any one of the 50. But the other TMs, they're just shuffled around, and they're always in the TM locations. And there's 4 in particular that are in really awful places, locked behind Waterfall. There's 1 in Mount Mortar, 1 on the way to Victory Road, 1 in Victory Road, and then there's 1 in Kanto, which was in Rock Tunnel, if I
believe
correctly.
so, yeah.
Those 4 TMs are pretty far out of the way, so they're not going to be going for those, but with Rising Badge being on the card, if things get dire enough, they might do it.
Races have gotten to that point. I mean, it's the kind of thing where if it is to that point, I think both people are at that point, but it definitely has happened before to, you know, pretty high-level players. It wasn't just them goofing something up.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, in the case of TM20, if you're assuming they're not going for those 4 TMs that are locked behind Waterfall, I believe it's a 71% chance that they'll show up.
Yeah, something like that.
So it's one of those where it's either there or it isn't, and if you're relying on that goal to be there, it feels really bad when it doesn't show up.
There's a lot of TM slots in Johto that are pretty along the way, so even, like, they're going to be checking a lot of these well, Monty probably isn't, but they're going to be checking a lot of these TMs kind of just on their way, and they already have pretty good odds just by checking the ones that are on the way that it'll probably show up. And then there's some that are slightly more out of the way that they can get and clean up to try to get that goal knocked out, if they still need it at that point. At that point, they usually will have a route, but we'll see what kind of info they have. So we're still looking at not a whole lot of info going on.
Based on all the information that we have available to us, assuming TM20 shows up, I'm counting 4 bingos, possibly.
Yeah, I think that looks right.
TM20 would open up row 3 and column 4. At least
What are we're still missing... We don't have Ivysaur Charmeleon... No, we have Ivysaur, I think. No, I'm thinking of the race that you did with Mamgar before this. See, this is the problem I'm going to have, is I'm going to mix everything I saw. The race you guys did.
I didn't see what Monty picked up for Kenya. I don't know if he's actually checked it yet.
Usually it's not optimal at all to check Kenya as soon as you get it, so most people will wait. Come on, oh,
ooh, it's
okay.
a tank.
Sure. So an important thing to note too with this interaction is that to get TM50, you have to give the Pokemon holding the mail that Kenya starts with to the guy on Route 31. So there's 2 things with that. The mail does not have to be attached to Kenya. You can take it off, and if you take it off and make sure it goes to your PC and not your bag, you can re-give it to a Pokemon, and whatever Pokemon is holding the mail is what the guy on 31 wants. So you can give it to another Pokemon to keep whatever Kenya is, if that is something that you want to do. Alternatively, for all the Pokemon obtaining goals, what matters is that they are registered in your dex as owned. You do not have to have them on your person, unless it is a goal that isn't just the Pokemon itself. So like the move goals, you need to have the Pokemon. Basically, our logic is that everything that you have on the card needs to be provable with current game state. So, you know, if you left the mail on Miltank, give it to the guy, your Pokedex still registers Miltank as being owned, so you still own Miltank as far as the goal is concerned. Other such goals, like there are a lot of other goals that can be losable. Like item goals, for instance. If you get rid of the item, you use it, sell it, whatever. You no longer have the goal. You have to have it in your bag, in your PC, or on a Pokemon. It has to be in your possession in some way.
Also, I think Miltank had a rock move also.
I did not
Monty
get a look at its
marked it.
moveset. So Monty's going down here to grab the coin case so he can buy the Game Corner pokes later. Grabbed a couple healing items from the herb shop as well, which is always nice. It's actually nice to see people routing in the herb shop, because that doesn't get used super often.
Yeah. I would expect Monty to skip Everstone or Goldberry and come back for it.
Probably.
The Everstone or Goldberry is what you get from the bug catching contest for taking second or third.
They used to be separate goals on our former draft of the card, but when we looked at the numbers again as far as the odds of you actually doing that, since the Pokemon in the contest and the stats of the Pokemon play a huge part in what place you take in the contest, there are certain contest, orientations that just are basically impossible to get one or the other specifically. So the numbers are a lot more in favor.
Now.
Yeah. It used to be a pretty miserable goal before. It still isn't the greatest, but it's much better than it used to be, that's for sure.
A funny issue that we've ran into more often lately is that winning is impossible.
Yeah.
Which, we never had a problem with that for like the longest time, and then suddenly these ROMs would just be coming where it just...
Yeah, and I believe even with the math of the odds of second and third place together, I believe you still have way higher odds to win.
So Whitney's Hoot Hoot had Sandstorm, so just
That is info on a rock type move. I guess they both have it at this point.
Yeah, they both have it. I just find it funny. So Herc's information lead is shrinking a little bit, but his ace in the hole right now is that Executor, because he found it in a fishing, or the execute in a fishing encounter.
It's not in the greatest spot on the card, but if a couple more things show up, he can make it work for him.
And with the Miltank showing up, assuming TM20 exists somewhere in this world, now that we have enough information for 5 bingos, but none of the runners quite know that yet. No, it looks like Monty opted to come in the bug catching contest now.
There still are a lot of Pokemon that they're probably still... If he just happens to get Everstone or Goldberry as he passes through here, then more power to him.
The other nice thing about the bug catching contest is it can give you information on Pokemon that may not otherwise pop up in the dex. If a Pokemon says that they're in National Park, that's in the normal National Park grass. That's not, it's not what's in the bug catching contest. Gloom was good enough for second place, so Monty gets his Everstone, and that will give Herc a little bit of a hint where he is in the game progress-wise. Now, Monty did that on the way back to the Pseudo-Wudo, so Herc might be assuming that he's not as far behind progress-wise as he actually is.
Yeah, this is definitely a bit of mind gaming you can do with... We don't have quite as many of them on this card, but there's a lot of, goals that are kind of tied to game progress. And you can either get them right when you get there, or just delay them and really mess with your opponent as far as where you are, which can be very useful as far as, Pokemon showing up and things like that.
Monty has to know that he's pretty far ahead progress-wise, though, because Herc just marked the Miltank.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very likely that he didn't find it randomly, at least as far as he's concerned.
Yeah. Odds are very in his favor that it was the Kenya, which it was. pretty safe thing to assume.
Yeah, and if it wasn't, and if Herc didn't find it as the Kenya, that would be mean he's even further behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is definitely a progress gap that can get closed in cleanup, but it's looking pretty in Monty's favor at this point. And Herc's trying to catch an Ampharos with a Rock Slide. That's fun.
I'm not sure why.
Okay.
I'm not sure why he's catching that. Oh wait, he was in the bug catching contest.
Yeah, see, I think that's a little bit too good for Everstone Goldberry, but
I thought the 16 Gloom might have been just too good enough, but
yeah, I'm actually surprised that worked. So the bug catching contest largely checks for base stats, max HP, and remaining HP. Those are the 3 of the main factors that you can kind of control. So Pokemon that have really high base stat totals or really high HP are usually going to be your ticket to victory, and not your ticket to Everstone Goldberry. Ampharos's HP isn't, and base stats aren't fantastic, but you're probably going to need a little bit of a lower level to get you there. I'm definitely curious to see if this works, if he ends up just going with it, which it looks like he's going to. One nice thing we didn't mention with Monty, I believe he did it as well. Looks like Herc's going to do it here. There's a TM in National Park that you can get, and it's usually good to grab it when you're in the bug catching contest because you can menu to the quit option, which just takes you straight out of the bug catching contest and saves you a ton of movement in looking at this TM. There's a hidden item over here as well that a lot of people often get. There's a lot of big pearls in this ROM. I guess they need the money anyway, so at Park 1, I had a feeling that was going to happen.
Gross.
Herc's going to be in a bit of trouble here.
Yes, Mamguard, that is in fact true. That was a weird interaction we had once.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot that happened. There's a lot of weird, small little interactions that happen with the randomizer. Looks like Herc got the Goldberry as well, so he's good to go.
I'm looking at what's here and what the next progress goal that's going to give Herc any hint on where Monty is. And really, the only ones I can think of aren't guaranteed for him to run into. Like, TM50 and Tojo Falls would probably be it.
Yeah, pretty much every goal that would tell him where he is at this point is just telling him that he's in cleanup. It's not really... That can still be useful for, if Monty finds Mankey Meowth in Tojo Falls, for instance, and marks them off at the same time. That's another signal that he could give away, but as far as just things that are guaranteed to be part of progress through the game, we're kind of out of things at this point. Yeah, they've got a lot of stuff that they can immediately do and clean up once they get there.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a pretty high amount of goals marked off already before cleanup. Usually we don't have this many, I would say. Especially in a race with just 2 people. This is always the interesting thing, too, with doing these with, up to like 5 people, is there's a lot more people to be running into things. So there's a lot more room for different goals and a lot of places to get marked off when there's different info needed. More rolls of the dice, as it were.
I almost think it's harder to hide information early on because of that. Like,
oh, definitely.
Some things in the early game when you're racing with 5 people,
it's gonna get found more than likely.
Somebody's gonna run into that 10th slot.
Alright, Monty's gonna be heading into the gym here. This gym's actually usually pretty good for getting info on Pokemon just because there's so many that you fight in here. This first guy has, I think it's 4, and then there's another trainer with 2, and then 1, and then Morty has 3.
This first guy in the gym can be a real pain sometimes, depending on your main. Like, 5 level 16s at this point are usually not a big deal, but like, if you run into something fast that like thunder waves you or something at the beginning of the fight, it's just miserable.
And optimally, when you get to Ekritik, you're usually healing at the second you get there, and then doing the Kimono Girls, and then without any healing in between, you're then going to Rival 3, and then you're going to Ekritik Gym. So like you're doing a lot of like this is probably the biggest string of fights without any like really convenient place to center. I mean, you can just go back to the center, obviously, but you really don't want to be doing that usually.
Not for Monta Blitz Spank.
Yeah, I think
Blitz,
I find that a lot of
Blitz.
times I get screwed in this gym or because I'm running out of PP and kind of having to get creative with my moves.
This is also the point in the game where you can kind of fix your moveset with Surf, assuming you have a way to deal with water types.
Yeah, so you get Surf and Ekritik, and then you can get Strength and Olivine, and then you get Fly and Cyanwood. So like you're getting 3 pretty good moves on HMs that can really just solidify a moveset in a lot of cases.
The classic 3 HMs plus a 4th moveset.
Yeah, that ends up being a thing quite often. We played a little bit around with testing nerfing HMs as well, which is another setting that we have in the ROM, which allows us to turn all the HMs into kind of just worse versions of themselves, and then there's the HM moves that wind up elsewhere. And they're kind of their own unique moves that we have in this ROM. But we kind of decided that it's not super good to just punish people at this point of the game for having a bad move set. This is the part of the game where there isn't as much fighting and progression that's really the focus. So if you get to this point of the game, the focus should be on routing the cleanup and not really punishing you for having a moveset that just kind of barely got you here. Usually the hardest part of the game progress-wise as well is the first couple gyms. Once you're at this point, you kind of stabilize pretty well most of the time.
What are you doing, man? You got rid of Wing Attack.
I
think he's realizing his mistake.
Yeah.
One of the TMs in the department store is Aeroblast, and while Aeroblast is a stronger move, it only has 5 PP.
And oftentimes, the really consistent thing is just getting moves that have higher PP, so you have to heal less.
I would have pod Aeroblast over Metal Claw because Aeroblast is still nice to have just because of how strong of a move it is, but you want to save it for when you absolutely need it. You don't want to be stuck with a bunch of 5 PP moves.
Yeah, and Metal Claw at this point isn't really that useful of coverage for him. Even using it for the attack boost if necessary isn't that useful. And Surf is going to deal with a lot of the things that Metal Claw would have been used to deal with before, so it's really not a move that's super worth keeping at this point. It's only, I believe, 50 base power as well, so it's on the weaker side for sure. I think at this point I'm just definitely curious to see how cleanup goes for each of them, because they definitely have some options, and they each have some different options as far as how they want to handle it.
Monty doesn't have enough information, at least as far as I can remember, for 5 bingos. So, at least usually when you're in that situation, or you get to clean up and you don't know what your path is, you just try and clear out as many goals as you can and hope that the information comes along.
And usually you want to prioritize goals that would give you information as well. So, like, prioritizing TM50 here, for instance, doesn't give you any information really that's useful for them. So, like, things that I would look to prioritize is like 6 badges, Even black glasses potentially, because you're running through a lot of encounter slots to get to where they are. 3 game corner
Game
Pokemon.
corner pokes gives you information.
Actually, a lot of the goals left on this card can get, because Pokemon in Tojo Falls as well would give you extra information. But a lot of times, if there's a lot of items in cleanup that you just need to go talk to an NPC and there's really nothing in your way, those are kind of lower priority just because you aren't really potentially knocking anything else out with it. And if something else shows up, it can potentially divert your path away from the item, and that item just ends up being a waste of your time. I think one of the hardest things in kind of optimizing how these play out is trying to cut down on the number of potentially useless goals that you're going to be doing. Obviously, if you're early in the game and a Pokemon shows up, you're going to want to catch it. It's not going to waste you that much time. But when you get, sort of to this point of the game and onwards, you're going to want to look to be cutting out a lot of the stuff that's unnecessary because it is just a waste of your time. You want to get through these bingos ideally in as few goals as possible. And there is a decent amount of variance in the number of goals that you can use to complete your 5 bingos.
Rattata giving Herc the business here with Hyper Beam.
Better that than some other rock type move, I would say.
God, if T-Tar had Rock Slide, they would have been there for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Get another free Pokemon here, which would normally be a Shuckle. It's always
looks like it's Ariados or Ledian. It's Ariados. I feel like the amount of times that this Shuckle has been Ariados or Ledian is extremely high.
I never see it as that, so,
Like, there's multiple times it's been Ledian, I've seen multiple times it's been Ariados.
So this, that being Ariados helped out Monty so much. That was one of the goals he needed.
Yeah, that makes
opened up
bottom
3
left,
bingos
top
for
right
him.
free.
Yeah, I think Monty has his path now, even if TM20 doesn't show up.
And it's important to mention, too, for Defeat Lapras, there's 2 ways you can go about doing that. You can either randomly find a Lapras, either in the wild or on a trainer, or there's a fixed Lapras encounter in the base game that you can get in the basement of Union Cave on Fridays. And every, essentially event Pokemon in the game also counts for the goal that is associated with what it is originally. So for Defeat Lapras, you can just go defeat that Pokemon that's in the basement of Union Cave on Friday, and that counts. Likewise, there's a goal called referring to statusing Sudowoodo, and you can just do the same thing with that. You can either status the fixed Sudowoodo or a random one. There's a couple other instances too, but those are the big 2.
Actually, Monty isn't quite in Go mode yet. He doesn't have Hitmonchan information. He's pretty close to it, though. He might opt to look for TM20.
He might opt to do Rising Badge.
You know...
That would be a really stupid play at this point, but it is Monty we're talking about.
I have known him to do dumb meme strats before, just because he thinks he can get away with it.
That's definitely how Monty loses at this point, I think. Because we still don't have Mankey Meowth, we still don't have Ivysaur, Charmeleon, Wartortle.
I don't think this Moltres is good enough to get Rising Badge, though.
Not without a bunch of X items.
Just takes one errant rock and it's over.
Yep. Also, has Herc seriously not defeated a legendary Pokemon yet? I just realized that was a thing that he still didn't have marked.
You know, I don't think there's been a legendary in a required fight.
I don't think there has been. It's very, very odd to see that goal at this point. I mean, I guess he knows where Moltres is, so he can always go back for it, but it's just very funny to see that not get marked off along the way.
I feel like he fought a Raikou earlier.
No, he caught it.
Oh, that's right.
Every legendary he's found, he's caught.
He still hasn't defeated one. That's funny. Alright, so Monty's in cleanup mode now. He just got Chuck's badge, which allows him to get Fly. He's probably gonna go get the shiny ace, or at least to get the red scale over there, since he needs to...
More than likely
opens
gonna
up
check
more
the
of
two
the
TMs
game.
up there as well. Well, the one. I guess the
Yeah.
one in the house doesn't do him anything, but... Yeah, so there's two TMs above Lake of Rage. There's a random one on the ground and a fixed one, which is TM10, given to you by a guy in the house. And I think at this point, Monty probably knows he's ahead, so there's a good chance that he might start looking for TMs, but we'll see.
Depends if he needs TM20. The weird thing about the random TM goals is if you're in the lead, it's almost in your best interest not to find them.
Yeah, because if it's still being elusive, then your opponent's going to give you the information that it's there eventually if they're looking. Either that or you're both just not going to find it, and you're not giving anything away.
Yeah, at least for me, if it's a goal that I'm relying on to win the game, I don't go out of my way to try and find the TM. I just check stuff along the way. There's about 4 TMs that are accessible that are pretty far out of the way that I can think of, like the Lighthouse, Dark Cave, Burn Tower to a lesser extent, under Goldenrod, and then there's the Rocket Hideout. So I guess that's 5 TMs. That
Slowpoke Well
as
as well, I guess.
The what?
Slowpoke Well as well.
Yeah.
Well.
You could make an argument for the Union Cave one, but I don't consider that one to be too far out of the way.
No. The one below the department store is semi out of the way, but depending on what you have to go back to Goldenrod for, or what you might not have to go back to Goldenrod for.
With the game corner pokes being on there, that one's kind of an easy check while you're there kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Now is where it's going to start being interesting what Monty does.
Yeah.
Looks like he's just going to go straight for price.
I wonder if Herc remembers that the Giraffe Rig goal was marked off the sleeping move goal at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely the point in the game where he's not taking good mental notes or actual notes of that kind of thing. Like, he could easily let it slip.
Another thing that you see people do when they're behind is you can usually have a pretty good idea what the leader's path is going to be. So you can, if you try and chase them on the same path, then you're probably not going to beat them. So maybe you'll take a gamble and look for encounters in a random spot like Whirl Islands.
Yeah, and Herc's definitely in a position where kind of fishing out where Mankey or Meowth is a bit more favorable would be for Monty, just because he has that Executor.
You don't want to buy game corner TMs. They are stupid expensive.
Yeah, they're especially when you need to buy Game Corner Pokemon as well. Definitely not then. Alright, there's Monty's 4-move Sharing's type.
He's going through without a repel here. I think he's hoping that he finds some information. Or
Yeah, looks like he's
maybe,
gunning for black glasses and hoping for something to show up.
Actually, I think he has a repel up and didn't realize the Metapod was leading.
Yeah, there's also that.
That sounds more like a Monty thing.
Yeah, because he box healed at the center.
I do that all the time, and, like, it feels bad because box healing is faster, but only if you don't make a dumb mistake like that.
It's not even a whole ton faster because of instant text, but since he was... I mean, usually if you're in your box anyway to deposit things, it's in your best interest to heal there, especially if you're only healing one Pokemon. Oh, I messed up Swag Boulder, no.
I first like I know the movement for Swag Boulder there, but I'm always like afraid that I'll push the boulder too far or fall down the hole by accident.
Yeah, once he gets to like the last couple pushes, that's where I start like babying it.
Doesn't even pick up the TM and Ice Path, Monty. You're killing me.
Yeah, that's a bit interesting. That's like the
Blitz.
one I probably still would check myself, even if I was blitzing this hard.
Yeah.
Because at this point, if he marks off TM20, it could be anywhere, and Ice Path gives you enough reason to go through it right now anyway, so Herc would probably find it anyway. It's not one of the ones that you're going out of the way for.
Like he's got a little bit of a money problem here.
Mm-hmm. He's definitely a bit short. He's going for black glasses. Oh, he's gonna check a couple slots here first. That's interesting. Not the worst idea. The only problem with this is if he finds something here and then very short black glasses, that narrows down where whatever he found could be.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still a lot of options. Like, I could reasonably glean that it was in Blackthorn Water, Ice Path, it was in Dark Cave itself.
Herc picking up Pidgeot for the 4 same type moves.
And nothing useful is wanting to show up here.
Be curious to see what they do. Herc's approaching cleanup mode pretty soon here, and
Monty's probably gonna go do Price. So maybe it's hard to say because 6 badges would be a good thing to do for info, but it's also in a row and a column that they can't finish yet. So
yeah. Goal-wise, Herc's not super far behind. He's got 11 goals to 13, though. The 2 goals that he continues to have the advantage on information-wise is Executor and Hitmonchan. So
yeah, Monty's at the point where he's gonna just start having to go for things and hope that they pay off. There isn't really too much left that's super reliable that would also be
I think
helpful.
he's still hoping that TM20 shows up from Herc, but
He's not gonna see it for a while.
nah, if I was Herc, I would delay TM until you need it.
Well, and it's even gonna be like another 5 or 6 minutes until Herc even would check another one. Actually, a little bit more than that. So
It could also be one of those scenarios where, like, maybe he thinks...
oh, he's fighting
Monty
everybody.
checked. I don't know, it's hard to predict what they're thinking sometimes.
This is probably a decent idea from Monty. This gives him money to solve his money issue. This gives him more information. Did Herc just find a random Lapras?
Yeah. He did.
Kind of funny that it's also level 20. That's the same
Yeah.
level as the event Lapras. It's a little bit silly.
Saves him a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent detour that he doesn't have to do, and it's in the center of the card, so it stands to reason that he was probably going to have to do it.
I think what this actually makes things a little bit interesting on what Monty might be thinking here, because if he sees Defeat Lapras get marked off, does he also think Herc's in cleanup right now?
Yeah, because it would either mean he's in cleanup or he just found one randomly.
Yeah.
I feel like Monty would know at this point that he probably still has the lead. I can't. If I was in Monty's position, I don't think I could think of what would possibly have closed that much of a gap because he knew he had a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
But
Oh wait, the area dose might tip him off.
yeah, that'll probably give it away. I didn't think about that before either.
And it had Rock Slide too.
Sure did.
All the free Pokemon have rock moves. Feels bad, man. The worst thing in the world when you find something early and think you have an advantage and then it just shows up for free.
Yep. Let alone multiple times. It's like Monty's going to Tojo.
He didn't get 6 badges, which is interesting. I guess the way he sees it, he doesn't need to get that goal unless TM20 or Ivysaur Charmeleon War
Yeah.
shows up.
He was just doing it for money and info. Mostly money. I mean, that is probably the most efficient way to get money at this point. Part of his money issue is probably in part just the fact that he skipped so many items because he was blitzing so hard.
Yeah.
I don't think... Has he even looked to see what his Pokemon scene count is yet? He's probably around the 90 mark. But I don't think he's actually... Because there's nothing that they have that he would have had to dex for.
He tried to fly inside of a cave.
Here's TM50. And I don't believe he knows what the Game Corn pokes are yet. I don't think either of them have a reason to look yet.
I know he
So when he
grabbed
goes
the
to buy
coin
them-
case. but
Yeah.
He didn't check the pokes.
Looks like he's going there now.
Gotta make sure you have enough space in your party to buy all 3.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well make sure you have enough space for the Eevee, too.
Yeah, so if you get the cutscene in Ecruteak City in the Pokemon Center, Bill goes back to his house, and when you go visit him again, he'll get a free level 20, which is also randomized. It's usually an Eevee in the base game, but...
2,400 coins is what you need. Nothing useful on the card there except for the buying 3 gold. I have accidentally bought the cheap Pokemon twice before because of how quick the text goes.
Mm-hmm. Is he clock resetting?
Yes, he is. Oh, I think he's setting it to Friday because he had the herb shop.
Oh, right.
So clock resetting in Crystal is
Rather
an interesting
tedious.
thing. In Gold and Silver, it was just I forget what the button combination was, but you did a button combination at the splash screen and then you could reset the clock. In Crystal, they made it a lot harder, and it required a password which is based on your trainer ID, the amount of money you have, and your trainer name. They really didn't want people abusing the clock reset in Crystal, so they added that little thing which generates a password. People have since figured out how to do it, but
Yeah, so there's really easy websites now where you just punch the 3 in and you get the code. So that's how we do it for these, but it's still something you want to kind of avoid doing if at all possible. It's just a little clunky. This will be a potential interesting thing too that Herc might end up missing out on because he locked into a Lapras. The Lapras could wind up being, Ranky Meowth or something else useful.
Bulbasaur. He ran away! Oh no!
He still has to get 6 badges to, like, he has an opportunity to level.
Monty, I am confused.
Yeah, I'm a bit... I mean, that would be... He'd have to take a lot of time to, like, readjust and make that work, but, like, he's in the position where that's kind of in his best interest, I think.
Yeah, unless he's
Maybe
going
it's just a
for
difference
other
of
goals
opinion.
that I just don't know. Monty, it would even open up Rising Badge, your favorite goal.
Maybe he'll come back if Lapras isn't one of those 3 pokes. The
You can
classic
tell he doesn't
forgetting
come
which.
down here that often.
Yeah. Okay, it's a Raichu. Oh, okay, that was an encounter he got. I looked over at Herx for enough time to not see that. Let's check a couple slots first.
Oh yeah, I guess Monty does have a path for 5 bingos.
Oh yeah, he does.
He just needs the Lapras and 90 Scene, and he's done.
Yeah. That explains for sure why he's checking slots too. He just wants to bolster his scene count.
You know, Mr. Blitz runs into this problem with 90 Scene. There was one time where he was so far behind on 90 Scene that he routed around it because he didn't want to get it.
Yeah, I know. It might have been him, but I saw there was one time where someone had like, what was it, like high 50s, low 60s, which is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because usually you kind of just casually get to that point at this like stage of the game.
You know, it's almost like that goal gets more annoying the more efficient you are with your goals.
It's the goal that keeps you playing honest.
He just keeps running into the same stuff no matter where he goes.
Yep, there's this 90. And that should be him done. So he'll be hitting done. This was actually absurdly fast.
Yeah, I'm surprised how quick this one went.
111. That is insane.
That is one of the shortest bingos I've seen.
Just for reference, seeing below 120 is usually pretty uncommon. So to get a 111 is pretty nuts. But there was a lot of pretty free stuff on that card. Usually on cards like this where they get a lot of info show up, that's when you kind of have situations like this.
The Miltank and the Ariados and the Rock Titan.
How the hell?
Very useful.
Hell.
Very, very good.
How did you get so far ahead?
And
That's what I want to know, because we got Goldberry at like nearly the same time, and there was a point where I like.
No, you guys were way far apart even by gold.
yeah, when Monty got the Goldberry, he was already done with Whitney.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I repelled everything.
It was mostly around Violet that you guys started getting separated because you were checking for a lot of stuff still, and Monty just went. Like Monty
Dude,
just went to Sprout. Like he got the Moltres.
There
and
was
just went.
nothing. There was nothing. That Moltres was awful. I didn't want to take that.
It had stab wing attack. That was amazing.
And that was it.
Well, it also had hyper beam. It missed more than I'd like it. And
Yeah, that was one thing that I
damage
noticed
range.
too. Is like Monty used Hyper Beam a lot more, which
It's a
definitely smooth things out.
as long as you don't misjudge your damage ranges.
Like Elderly in particular is a huge one. Like Monty just Hyper Beamed the Lantern, and it was just done. And Herc, you were playing a little bit safer, which I probably would have done too, to be honest. But
I think the fact that Miltank and Ariados were just gift Pokemon.
yeah, there really
it
wasn't a whole
kinda
lot of
sucked.
info that ended up being necessary. Like, you
Yeah,
guys
it was
found everything you
ridiculous
Sucked.
how much stuff was just on the way. Miltank also had Sandstorm and Sing.
And Ariados also had Rock Slide on top of that.
Yeah, there were rock moves everywhere.
I just used Draft Rig for 4 non-TM.
Is
Oh, you
gonna use-
can learn to move through level up.
Yeah, I was gonna try
Nice.
you to use one of the bugs if that didn't work out. I caught a bunch of caught Caterpie and Metapod because Butterfree learns a ton of level up moves.
Yeah, normally these don't go that fast. It's usually around an average of 130, 120.
Yeah, that was
fast is
actually
that?
insane.
Yeah, this is what happens when all the gift
15?
Pokemon are on the card, which
Yeah.
does not happen often.
No.
Yeah.
This is probably
definitely
the
an
most
outlier.
one I've done on this card. Toughest goal
know.
for me was 90 Pokemon seen.
That one is.
That's because you blitzed so hard.
That one
Yeah,
has just
seriously.
been a notorious goal for you over time.
It
Yeah,
is.
I
seriously,
still
Jesus.
remember the race where you were so far away from getting 90 that you decided to skip the goal and route around it.
I wish I could have done that this time, but it's 3 bingos. I can't do it.
We were
Dude,
joking
we-
about you potentially going for Rising Badge earlier. This is how he loses. But
We saw the
Yeah,
Bulbasaur
I didn't have enough
show, and it's
information to
like,
get a
oh,
bingo
now
out
you
of
can
it.
do
Yeah.
Rising Badge.
Until the very end.
yeah, Mankey Meowth and Ivysaur Charmeleon Wartortle we're not there.
I found a
No.
Bulbasaur at the very end when I was grinding for Pokemon Scene, but it was like in the middle of nowhere.
God, that was awful. I was actually really annoyed that I wasn't getting encounters in the first like 2 routes.
Yeah, you didn't get a whole lot.
I knew where he found the Girafarig, Wobbuffet, Dunsparce, and that it had a sleep move. Like I knew where that was, so I wasn't worried about that because I just go back and get it. But like there was
That
other
wasn't
things
so
like
So,
it's the best thing to run.
where
Ugh.
do you think the Executor was, Monty?
I was gonna guess Route 36, but
No,
I don't actually know.
Something like that.
sort of.
Fishing.
When I saw him mark TM50, I'm like, okay, I don't know, it could be anywhere.
He fished
You know,
out
fishing
an
rod.
Execute in Union Cave.
Dang. Yeah, not
Yeah.
guessing that. That's the trouble
I
with
saw
that
it. I was
game
like, sweet.
for an Executor. You can't assume that they just got it when they marked it because it could have been a stone.
Mm-hmm. And Hitmonchan was on 46, so like he had those 2 goals on you forever, but they unfortunately
46.
didn't-
I assumed it would be on 29.
Because everything just was given to us anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't even take advantage of some Flora Executor or Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, Hitmontop very easily.
No.
You get row 1, but that's it.
Yeah.
TM20 would have needed to been somewhere, and you didn't check any of the TMs, and Herc didn't find it in what he found.
Yeah.
If I check TMs, I usually like to do it post-fly. Because
I
that's when I
wanted
know
to-
whether I need it or not.
I wanted
Yeah.
to find something to make the Moltres a little better.
It had
I
everything
found
it needed.
Aeroblast, but and then I learned Ice Punch, which I was okay with.
Like, Wing Attack's the main move. You just gotta watch out for the 3 types that it's bad against, which is Electric, Rock, Steel. You've got Dynamic Punch for Rock,
Yeah.
Steel, and you've got Hyper Beam for the Electrics.
Yeah. And Cleffa, gross. Oh, I've got no room. What am I doing? I'm trying to like for posterity for myself, but
Yeah, you're still pretty close to done.
I was getting close. Like I knew as soon as I got Fly, I'd be like really close to done, but Monty just leaving immediately.
Should, what's the tournament?
Yeah, I skipped everything. I even repelled Route 29 on the second pass.
What?
Yeah, so we mentioned at the beginning of this, we're doing another tournament starting on March 9th. Sign-ups are still open for that. Our Discord's still open even if you don't want to join the tournament. So feel free to hop on in either of those. Join us for the festivities.
It'll be fun.
This game is
Yeah.
pretty fun. Even if you haven't done it before, it's worth checking out.
And there's definitely a lot of people around to, answer any questions you have, and we've got pretty
Plus-
thorough resources at this point for everybody
There's
coming
like
in.
Plus, there's like a race that's always happening throughout the days. So like, especially during the week around like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and like 6, like those seem to be like the majority of when people want to race, like when they're getting home from work and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of people around that can help out, and it's still a lot of fun.
There's always races happening.
Oh,
Always,
Yeah.
always, always.
Jesus. This is, Alright. Pokemon in the thing. Had barrier reversal. Wait, does reversal do damage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
Doesn't do very much, but it does damage.
It's fighting Endure, basically.
But it is a different move, so I was like, oh, sweet, I got 3 non-TM, but not the case. Or 4 non-TM. Yeah.
Any closing thoughts from either of you before we sign off?
I was a little annoyed that he got that far ahead that quickly with the most trace.
I was
What's-
surprised how
what's-
far ahead.
what's-
I had some
so was
bullshit
I.
luck this race. I had some pretty good luck early on.
I was really surprised that you got that far too.
I should have died like at least twice in Sprout
Dude.
Tower.
I kept getting memed on, like... I can't remember what it was, but something just pulled out Hydro Pump, I think, and just... It was either that or the
That-
last
that
race.
was the
I
The
Lantern.
Lantern had Hydro Pump.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what it was. The Lantern had Hydro Pump, and it kept killing... Like, it almost killed me, like, several times. So dumb.
But yeah, these are fun.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. We're doing another one of these hopefully next week, so should be doing these weekly in between tournaments, so in the same time as well. So
Whee! I'm just gonna circle this guy for a while. Nah.